Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of Corporate Cardboard. So this is a board game variety show where we talk about all things board games. You probably know me if you're watching this video, and I suppose you should know Mackenzie by now, my co-host. So Mackenzie, how are you today?
I'm great. Things are fantastic here in Colorado Springs, and I'm ready to talk about some games.
Amazing. This is an episode where I'm in control of everything, so be prepared for some carnage. But I'm going to try to keep it simple and keep everything on Board Game Geek today, so I don't have too many cock-ups. But let's get started, as usual, with what games we've been playing. So Mackenzie, what games have you been playing since the last episode?
All right, so this first game is one that just arrived via Kickstarter, one of my most anticipated Gen Con releases. This is Dinosaur World. So Dinosaur World is like the fifth game from Pandasaurus that's all about dinosaurs. This is the natural evolution of the whole system, where instead of playing with just tiles and putting them inside of this large square grid, you've moved on to the big boys, to hexes. So you're going to be using these hexes and placing all sorts of workers and dinosaurs in them, more in a suburbia style where it matters where you're actually placing these tiles. You're going to be using this Jeeple, and you'll be using these arrow markers to move it around at the end of every turn to generate excitement, which is going to get you money that you're going to use to spend on more tiles that you can use to get even more points and make more dinosaurs. Now, the game is a natural evolution, as I said before. It uses a lot of similar mechanics, but it does so in a way that if you play, you'll notice they've streamlined lots of things. They've gotten rid of a lot of the extra fiddly bits, but they've replaced them with more fiddly bits. So with the Jeeple itself is really fun, though. I love the idea of actually traveling to your park and using your different buildings. It really matters what you're buying, and I think that's cool. You can have a completely different strategy based on these tiles that you're drafting and you're picking during the early phase. They use the mechanism from Paladins of the West Kingdom, where at the start of every round, you'll reveal a certain number of cards, and then you pick one of these cards, and that generates you a bunch of different colored workers. And then based on those workers, you use those to take your actions for the whole round. So you'll be using them in these different phases. You'll be spending the workers to either grab tiles to add to your park, or you'll be using the workers to activate the things in your park. And I like this idea that you have this resource, and this resource is up to you to spend from kind of season to season or phase to phase. So it gives me a little viticulture vibes too, where you have to allocate them appropriately through different areas, and you can hold back and save some. But cool thing here is if you don't spend any, you can use them during the next phase. But you're going to want to spend those, because not only are you able to increase your park's efficiency, generate dinosaurs, but there's also this new track, the Jeeble track, which has been added. So it kind of retains everything from the base game, but now you have this Jeep that you can use. And the more you upgrade it, the more movement it gets in your park, and then the more places you could visit, the more excitement you could generate. You also, the more you upgrade, the more income you receive. So it's tied to your income as well when it comes to things outside of money. So you can get DNA income, you can get more workers for income. So it's got this cool little mechanic around it. I really like that you can go through different strategies in this game. We played one where I went full carnivore strategy, trying to pursue one objective, and somebody else did more of a balanced generalist strategy. We had somebody focus on not even any dinosaurs. They didn't have any dinosaurs till like the very end of the game, except for like these attractions where they had like a T-Rex jet skiing and Velociraptor culinary experience. And that's like all, it was so funny. They just had these really interesting buildings as opposed to going kind of like the normal routes. And I thought this was really cool and really exciting. The expansions are very easy to integrate, except for the water expansion that really does change things. And it adds one of the most mundane tasks to a dinosaur park, cleaning tanks for algae. And I think that's so goofy. I don't know how or why they decided to go with this mechanism, but it cracks me up. And I think it's, if you like those dinosaur games, this is a great evolution of those mechanics. And if you didn't really care for them, I think this one is worth checking out, because we actually got rid of Duelosaur Island and Dinosaur Island just because the choices, it felt you were doing the exact same thing every time. There was no variance between the dinosaurs or anything. It was just not very exciting. I think this game is actually a huge step up when it comes to decisions, choices, and longevity. So I'm very excited for, I don't know, if you have this, if you have a chance to try it, I say give it a try, Dan. It's still a little bit fiddly, has a little bit of bits, but I think it works well here, actually. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I love these games, but I've always had a bit of a mixed kind of feedback from what people think about them, coming from yourself as well. But I suppose it sounds like this one's fixed a lot of the problems that the other ones had. Do you feel that they're different enough to warrant having them both, or do you feel like the second one's been made to fix those problems?
I think this one has been made to pretty much fix all of the problems for the first two. Duelosaur Island and Dinosaur Island both suffered from just everything was the same. All the dinosaurs did the exact same thing. It was just so similar. There was no choices really. It was more of like, hey, did you get this first? You better, because otherwise you're gonna lose. And you just kind of everything played out as you would expect. This one, there's actual choice, actual variety, actual decision making, and that's huge. That's huge, and they've streamlined so many little things, and it's so noticeable if you've played this before, this style of game. So I think that this is just you don't even need to look at the other two anymore. This just completely replaces them.
Okay, and what's the kind of prognosis in terms of if you had to put it out of 10, obviously 10 being the best?
Yeah. I would probably give this one an 8. I think it's good.
Okay.
I think it's much better than the other two. The other two I give a 6. So I think this one it's not the best game in the world, but it's fun. It does its job really well, and I think it's probably the best at its genre right now. That being said, the roll and write that comes with the Kickstarter is actually pretty great too. So I'm quite impressed. This is good stuff. Good stuff in that Kickstarter.
Okay, cool. Well, sounds interesting at least. I'll just say a quick hello to Tim, who's joined us for the episode. Thanks for joining us, Tim. And he's made a comment here about me being at the helm. Yeah, exactly, Tim. Yeah, I completely agree, and hold my hands up. Right, cool. So let's talk about the first game I've been playing since the last episode, and this is the roll and write version, which we just mentioned, of Rajas of the Ganges. So this is Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers. So this is the roll and write version, and actually I'm really impressed about how similar this game is compared to the board game version, but purely confined to a sheet of paper and a bunch of dice. So this one you get done in a fraction of the time. So Raja of the Ganges wasn't a particularly long game anyway, about 60 to 90 minutes. This one falls around more that 30 to 45 minute stretch in terms of its length. And this one you are rolling a bunch of dice, you're drafting those dice from a common pool with the other players, and then of course, as with any roll and write game, you're using them to tick off different things on your player sheet. And the player sheets are really intuitive, and they do a great job of easily breaking down what these things do. So on the left hand side here, we've got all these different kind of characters here in the palace. They give you little bonus actions, such as going down this river, where you can go from left to right, and wherever you stop, you get certain bonuses. Depending to other bits on the map. I suppose the main feature here is this landscape part here, where you've got all these roads, and some of these dice that you're drafting are going to have different sections of roads on them, such as like you get your L-shaped ones, you get your straight lines. Sometimes you get 2 half roads, which you can use kind of how you like. And then you're kind of, when you cross past these buildings, you're going to get a number of points depending on what you invest in on this scroll part of the board. So the more you invest, the more points you're going to get. And you've got the goods part here as well, where you can collect these goods by drafting the relevant dice. But then you have to go to certain areas, either on this map area or some of the bonus areas, to sell those goods to get the points at the bottom. And as you can see, everything you do has some kind of fallout or domino effect on it. So if you complete these roads and you touch the outer edges, then you get a little bonus. If you get these columns done, you got a bonus. If you get a certain amount of the palace actions done, you get bonuses. And you can really string together these domino effects to take extremely powerful actions. And it really does feel so satisfying when you get these triggering effects. One thing triggers another, and that's exactly what you want from a roll and write game, at least in my opinion. And yeah, this is definitely one of the best examples of that. And to be honest, this one completely eradicated the need for me to play the board game again. I think this one is so much better. I say so much better; it's marginally better. But considering it's on a piece of paper, that makes it a lot better. And that potential for combos really does ramp it up for me. So I've really enjoyed this one. Massively impressed with Rajas of the Ganges, the Dice Charmers.
This looks fantastic. So I love the idea that did it so well that it replaced the game for you. I love that. It reminds me of like what Fleet the Dice game did for Fleet, where you've taken that entire gigantic, more convoluted experience and refined it really streamlined it to the point where there's no reason to use the board or any other pieces. That's so awesome. I love that they succeeded in bringing this entire theme, this entire gameplay into, like you said, a single sheet of paper. I think that's so cool, and I think that's like the mark of an amazing roll and write game, especially if you're basing it off of stuff. I know there's a lot of roll and writes that seem tacked on. I know that the Twa Dice game received a lot of hate for how poorly implemented it was. So I'm glad that this one really holds up, and that gives me a lot of hope. Now, can this one play solo? Is this one that you can easily jump into and play on your own too?
I believe there's not a solo mode in the
Okay.
game, because it's a race game. It keeps the same victory condition as the original board game, where you're where you're trying to connect your coins to the victory points. When they cross over, that's who determines the victor. So I believe, I'm pretty sure that there's no solo mode, which is quite strange.
Oh,
It
wow.
would have been good if it would have been good if there was some version or some tweak to the rules. But I'm pretty sure there isn't. Don't
And
quote
that's
me on
okay
that.
to
But
not have a solo mode here, because that's kind of the whole premise of the game, right? Is that race. So I'm glad they kept the spirit of that. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of my favorite parts about the actual board game was the victory condition, and that was kind of its unique thing. And this kept that same idea, which I'm happy with.
Excellent.
So what's next, Mackenzie?
All right, so this weekend we did a large Halloween game day. Played lots of stuff that's on my upcoming top 10 Halloween board games list and some of the fall board games. But one game that I was not expecting to play is based on the movie Hocus Pocus. So in this game, you play as the kids that are fighting against the Sanderson sisters. It's your job to do this by creating ingredient-filled potions. And you do this by playing cards in an Uno-esque manner. So on your turn, you're going to have a hand of 4 cards, and you'll be playing your cards into this cauldron in the center of the board. And you're trying to stun one of the 3 witches, and each of them has their own stun condition. So you're going to play one to the board, and you play it on these like 5 matching stacks. And your whole goal is to get the ingredients to either match all the same, match all the colors the same, or to match the colors, make the colors different, and make the colors different and the symbols the same. So if you manage to do all those things, you'll stun one of the witches, and you have to stun the witches 3 times. Now, this game right off the bat, it is like super long. And it's crazy how long this game is, because all you're doing on your turn is playing a card. But before you play a card on your turn, you're asking for information from the other players. And when you do this, I think this is a different game. I think this is like a...
I thought it might be.
The Hocus Pocus is like definitely like the one that's based on the movie. You can see like the different actresses. I forget who they are now.
Do you know which year it was
Sarah
from?
Jessica Parker. I think it's from 2020, or it's very recent. I think it's that top one, Disney Hocus Pocus, the game.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So you're playing in this cauldron, but oh my gosh, it just like takes a while, because the whole goal is to be playing card after card and try to train a sequence of events. But the communication is limited. On your turn, you're allowed to ask one piece, and you'll say, hey, is this color, do you have any blues in your hand, anybody? And they say yes or no. Do you have any reds in your hand, or do you have this specific ingredient? And you're trying to suss out what people have. Now, there are some cool things about this game. Some of the cards will have powers attached to them, and when you play them, you'll get to do something cool. There's the Binks token, which is the cat, and if you play that, you put it in front of somebody, and they get to show their whole hand. And that's kind of sweet, because they're able to really give all the information. You can make more strategized plays. And then there's also cards that are event cards. And when you play them, they'll trigger, one of the witches will attack you with a spell of some sort and do something bad. You might have to discard cards in your hand or things like that. And the reason that you want to play these cards, the spell cards, is if you succeed in one of the conditions, then you're able to shuffle the entire discard pile, all the cards that have special tags on them, back into the deck, and you lose the game when your deck runs out. So it incentivizes you to play the event cards, because you are able to get those cards back. So it's really nice, as opposed to playing things without them. It's a bit more safe, but you're having less options in the future, which I think is a really clever mechanic. So I really like that system. However, the game itself, the playing cards, the stack in the middle, is very boring in my opinion. And as I said before, it does take a very long time. So this becomes an experience that I just didn't really find that interesting or fun. I felt that my choices were honestly not that exciting. And a lot of times I would ask for information and get nothing. And my turn was, oh, I got to play a card. I'll play a card. And I was more just going through the motions than I was making actual choices and decisions. So unfortunately, a bit frustrating of a game for me. But I really did like the event mechanic. I thought that was solid. I like the idea that it's forcing you to play bad stuff in order to actually recur it. So I really like that system. I'd like to see that in other games. But overall, I think the gameplay around some of the better mechanics was just not that strong. But the theme was great. I really like the art on the cards, and I think that they did a good job bringing this movie into the game, especially with the spells. All the spells are like the quotes and stuff from the movie. So if you like the theme, this might be one that you'll enjoy.
Okay. And despite not thinking it's the best game from your own perspective, do you think there is a market for this one, or do you think it is just for the IP, just for the theme?
I think it's just for the IP, this one. I think this very much falls into, I think the op has a lot of games like this that are like, hey, do you like this thing? Here's a game for it. Hey, and if you really like the theme, it's going to work for you. Saw this with Jaws and other games like this. Not my favorite games, but if you like that IP, it's going to be one that you enjoy playing.
Okay, and when you said it took a long time, how long are we talking?
I think it felt longer than it actually was. I would probably say it took maybe about 45 minutes. 45 minutes for like a simple Uno card game, though, feels long, especially when on your turn you're not doing much. And I don't know. That's where I was after this. I think everyone at the table kind of was feeling this. And the person teaching us, we were all just like, "Oh, we don't want to be super rude about this." But
yeah, completely agree. I mean, it doesn't matter how long that time frame is. If long's too long for the game, then it could be any length, can't it? So, yeah, fair play. So that sounds like a one to dodge. That's a
skip from me.
A big skip. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a game that certainly isn't a skip, and this one is going back a few years. This one is Tigress and Euphrates. So Tigress and Euphrates, probably if you're watching this video, you're probably familiar with what this game is. This is one of the old classic Euro almost cornerstones by Dr. Rainer Knizia. So this is, I think it's probably, despite being nearly 25 years old now, I think it's still pretty unique in what it does. I can't think of anything else that replicates what this game achieves, obviously apart from Yellow and Yangtze, which is a re-implementation of it, but I don't really count that in the argument because it's almost the same game. And this is a tile placement game where you are basically acquiring points of 4 different colors by basically claiming ownership of these cities. Then when you place subsequent tiles of those colors, you're going to generate an income of those tokens. And I suppose this was the pioneer of that classic Knizian scoring method, where you have different ways to score points, or different categories of points, and at the end of the game, the lowest of those 4 categories in this example is your score. So you can't neglect anything. You have to make sure that you're spreading yourself a bit thinner and not just tunnel vision on one specific color. So I think that's a really cool idea. Anyway, I think that still holds up really well in terms of being a unique way to score points. But this one, said you're placing tiles, getting points in that way. When you place a certain amount of tiles, you can get these pagodas and these temples in this example. And these temples are going to be basically like ticking points, where at the end of your round, you can just automatically generate a certain cube color. And I suppose that's all pretty simple, very easy, digestible game. But I think where this game really does come alive is the way that conflicts are resolved, and where battles and revolts and wars are resolved. So there's basically 2 types of conflict, where one, if you jump into the same city with another color of the matching type as yours, then you have a little scrap depending on your power in the red tiles, and you can boost them up from ones behind your screen if you have to kind of resolve who's going to be the dominant one and kick the other person out, and that gets you a red token, which is of course one of the scoring categories. And the other one, which is the much more dynamic version of the battles and conflicts, is the way that wars are resolved. So whenever you have these 2 kingdoms on the board, and when they connect with one another, then a war is going to resolve if each of those cities, or any of those cities, have a matching color from another player in those cities. And then you're going to basically calculate all the color of tiles in each city and weigh them up against one another. You can again contribute tiles from behind your screens to boost up that. And then whoever loses will give points equal to the amount of tiles removed to the other player, or at least they'll take points, not give points. And that's going to be basically how the game's going to work. It's very dynamic. Things are constantly changing and shifting. Tiles are coming off the board. Tiles coming on the board. I mean, again, I love that way you spin the plates and just have to keep everything going, because there are points in this game where I was doing really well in 3 of the categories. One of the categories I was doing terrible on. I just couldn't get those points. And yeah, you just have to make sure you diversify yourself and not neglect anything. But I think this game holds up extremely well considering how old it is. And it still feels like a classic. I think there is some scope here to be a bit confusing when you're explaining it, despite it being an easy rule set in theory. But when you're actually teaching it and what the colors do, each player isn't a color; they're a shape, and it can be quite hard to digest, and the learning curve can be have some speed bumps. But I still think it's great. I think it's a wonderful game, and I'm really glad I got it to the table at 4 players. So what are your thoughts on Tigress and Euphrates, Mackenzie?
So I totally agree with just like the strangeness of this game design. And you're totally right. This just isn't replicated in other games. And that's what makes it so hard of a teach, because these concepts just don't exist anywhere else. And I think that's really, really cool. Now, this one I actually have not played, because when I got into the hobby, Yellow and Yangtze was just coming out. So I was like, okay, I'll wait until this one comes out and I'll try this one. And it's like you described, it's basically the only other game that borrows the same mechanics. It's very similar. You have a hexagonal board instead, but pretty much everything else is identical. The way the wars and the skirmishes work with the leaders, the control, it's just a little bit easier to build pagodas, and I believe they've streamed out a couple more things. But I really like this system. I really like the way that the players are kind of creating this economy, and I love the way that the cities form and expand. And I imagine that translates well to this. Have you played Yellow and Yangtze? Out of the two, which do you prefer?
I have played Yellow and Yangtze, and I will say I like them both. I said some of the additional things in Yellow and Yangtze were really welcomed, I think, in terms of the green tiles, when you get to choose your tile rather than draft it from the bag. But I will say I did, not significantly, but I did confidently prefer Tigress and Euphrates.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I think the main reason for that was because of the way that the wars are resolved. So
okay.
In Yellow and Yangtze, I believe wars are always fought with red tiles, and in Tigress and Euphrates, you actually fight the wars with the colors which are being contested. And I thought that was I thought that was a bit more kind of intuitive. And am I right in thinking that in Yellow and Yangtze, when you win a war, no matter how many tiles you remove, you always just get 1 point of that color? Whereas correct. In Tigress and Euphrates, if you have a big kingdom with 5 blue tiles versus a kingdom versus 6 blue tiles, and the 6 blue tiles one wins, you get 5 blue points rather than just the 1 by beating that color. So it felt a bit more momentum and a bit more grand in scope, I think. But
okay, that's significant. That's big swings point wise.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm certainly not going to say that Yellow and Yangtze is a bad game. I think it's a great game. But this one, if I had to compare, I would choose Tigress and Euphrates over it. And that's going to be, that's the catalyst why I'm going to be actually culling Yellow and Yangtze from my collection.
Wow. Okay. Very nice. Thank you for the insight. I think that makes a lot of sense. Wow.
Okay. Cool. What's up next, Mackenzie?
All right, the last game that I have been playing is one that you actually recommended to me last time over on my channel, and this is the game Startups. So Startups is a cute little oink game where you play as a bunch of people, a bunch of investors working with these startup companies, and you do so by an arboretum style where you're going to be drawing cards to your hand and then playing them in front of you. However, instead of playing a tableau, you're just creating, these stacks of cards. It's a set collection game more than anything else. But the whole trick here is you only will be scoring points for these startups if other people have invested in them. And the way that happens is they take them from the center or the top of the deck as well and put them in front of themselves. At the end of the game, for each of these startups you have the most cards in, you're going to be taking money from the other players that have those cards and then flipping them into $3 instead of $1 and getting the money that way. Now, I've played this game about, I think, probably 12 times at this point now, and every time I play it, it is so interesting because when it's taught initially, people just kind of watch it evolve, and they're like, "What the heck is happening?" And they see what's going on. But the more and more I play this game, the more and more I don't think it's the best in its genre. I do think it's still fun, but I can't help but compare it to other games in a similar vein. I got to play Arboretum yesterday, actually, and going back to Arboretum, I just felt that my decisions in that game were a bit more dynamic with the cards that I'm holding in my hand, or in Capital Lux when I am playing cards in front of me, and in the capital city, I felt that I had a bit more control of what was happening. This one is interesting as you can play from 3 to 7 players, but I think the 7-player game is not good. I did play at that player count, and when it comes to that version, the game is just over too fast, and you really only get like 2 or 3 turns just because of the amount of people that are playing things, and it felt a lot random. When you get to the lower player counts, I think this game shines. I think 3 or 4 is probably best in my opinion, because it's a lot more tight. You have a lot more cards, which means a lot more decision space. But the more we played this, the more it became pretty telegraphed what were like the better plays. So it's weird to find this spot. If there's too low of a player count, it becomes pretty obvious which cards to take, which cards to put out. But if you're playing at a higher player count, you're getting less turns overall. But then the scoring just seems a bit more wild and random to me. And I don't know. I don't know where this game falls on me. I like the mechanics. I like the system, but I feel like I'm not doing much when I play this game. And I feel like my decisions are not as big as I felt my first couple of plays. The anti-monopoly tiles are a neat idea, as you're not allowed to take any additional cards from the center. But most of the times, those cards are not appearing in the center. And if they are, they're snatched up pretty quickly, where it doesn't really matter if you have that token or not, in my opinion. If somebody's fighting for a specific color, they're not going to let that color usually sit in the center. Or it won't stay in the center very often, because it's going to be accruing money if people aren't taking it. So it has a bunch of cool mechanics. It has a bunch of cool sounding mechanics that borrow from a lot of popular games. But just going back and playing Arboretum, I prefer the control of your hand of cards. I like the idea of being able to pick and choose what you're going after. And I much prefer the system in Capital Lux 2 Generations, as it has that similar mechanic of you play everything in your hand into your majorities, but you also have more control and more choices when it comes to the powers and abilities that you're activating. But it kind of occupies that same space. This is a very short game, though. Startup is very short, which is something that's good about it. It's very different, but I don't think it's absolutely incredible. So I was very excited to jump into this one, but I'm not sure how often I'll be returning to this one over other games in its similar vein. But I do appreciate the recommendation. I think it has a lot of things that I do like, but I don't think it's that complete package for me. What do you think? Anything I'm saying here ringing true? Have you played it some more since last time?
I think I might have played it another time. I will say I cannot disagree with what you're saying. I do think Arboretum is better in pretty much every category it does. But as you said, the Arboretum takes 30, 45 minutes, maybe a stretch. This one, I think the thing that did impress me the most is how much game there is in comparison to how long it takes. It is genuinely a 15-minute game, which there's not many games that take that long in general. And if they are, they're normally just throwaway games that don't do anything. And I think comparing, like I said, there are better games in the category, but I don't think there are better games in the category that take that long or that fast. So if you are just looking for a game just to finish off the night in the last 15 minutes, then this is a great one to bring out. I think it's a clever game. I think it does a lot, and yeah, I do understand that the decisions do feel minor at times, and sometimes it can feel like you feel like the obvious choice is there, but it still feels tight, and it feels a bit agonizing at times. Like, oh, there's that tension throughout it, which I think is good for a game of this scope. But I completely agree with you, to be honest. But I do, maybe I like it a little bit more than you do. I don't know, but I think it's a good one. Okay, so the final game I want to talk about is another game which, to be honest, wasn't the biggest hit for me. So just to pull the needle the other way, this one is Kanagawa. So this is a game dating back to 2016 by Bruno Cathala, an absolutely gorgeous looking game. So this is a game where you are basically making these kind of panoramic paintings, or these watercolors, And it uses this drafting system, this card drafting system, and these cards are multi-use cards. So you're using them for two different purposes. One of which is being the actual painting themselves, and one of which is almost like the prerequisites you need to make the paintings. And the way that you draft these tiles or these cards in the first place, so it's pretty interesting. It uses the almost Coloretto system where you are playing cards down in rows, and then you can choose to kind of pull out and take a column of cards, or you can, if everyone waits and passes, then it'll go to the next row and then the next row again. So you're kind of building up these incentives to take these cards, but you don't want to build it too much because somebody might grab them before you do, and they're the ones you really want. And the idea is you're trying to collect these different types of panorama, because you want certain types of buildings, you want different types of buildings, you want certain characters, certain animals. You want to have the longest run of like the seasons on these cards. So it's pretty much, I'd call it a pretty predictable Bruno Cathala design. His designs tend to kind of follow this pattern where you have the same ways of scoring, I found. But it was pleasant. I did enjoy it. Somewhat underwhelmed by it because it just didn't do anything new, and I wanted it to be better than it was because it is so pretty to look at. But it was okay. I mean, for an intro level, 30-minute card game with a certain visual appeal, then I think it's probably worth checking. I think absolutely stunning to look at. But the gameplay was a little bit lackluster, and not something I'll be looking to explore too much further. Have you played this one at all, Mackenzie?
I have not played this one, but oh man, you are on fire recently with your disdain for Bruno Cathala games. So I'm curious. Do you like any games from this designer? It's not even like I dislike them. I just don't really like them that much. They're just kind of like flatline for me. And again, it's just not my. I don't know. It just doesn't quite get me excited. I would say I did, out of all of them, I did like probably Abyss the most. I did quite enjoy Abyss. I thought that was quite a clever game, and it had some cool different ways to build up these set collection points. It was another gorgeous looking game. So I think out of all of them, probably my favorite is Abyss. But out of all of them, I've played quite a few now. And I just haven't really found the one that really did, light a fire in me and make me, sell me on his games. But yeah, I should probably know by now that I shouldn't have I shouldn't have picked this one up because it was just pretty much predictable, to be honest. Gotcha. I'll probably steer clear of this one, if we're being honest.
Yeah, fair play. And just to go back on your Hocus Pocus game, Tim made a comment here saying that when Villainous came out, it set a high standard for Disney IP and IP games in general. And he hopes to see better treatment of IP generally in the future. I think that's a really valid point. I think a lot of people were very surprised when Villainous had a really good blend of being accessible, holding true to the theme and stuff, but still being a little bit gamey enough to keep more experienced gamers engaged. So yeah, that was a really good winning formula, I think, with Villainous. But I do think as a general pattern anyway, IP games are being treated in a different light than they were several years ago. Would you agree with that, Mackenzie?
I totally agree. I think that there's some really good games that are IP based. Like Dune Imperium is fantastic. I think that the Reckoners board game is great, and that's based off that book series. I think there's been really good steps in the right direction here when it comes to IPs, and it's cool when you can go to a Target and you can see games that are all based on properties, and you know that some of them are going to actually be good. And so they even have like those smorgasbords of games in the form of like Unmatched and pretty much any Marvel game that's come out recently has been pretty solid, which I'm pretty happy about.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be kind of an upward trend, really. So yeah, I think the future's bright, ready for IP games. Okay, so let's move on from the games we've been playing then and go on to crowdfunding. So Mackenzie, anything you want to talk about on this episode in relation to crowdfunding?
Yes. So this week, so I talked about this in our like what we've been playing over on our channel. We go with, like minute reviews. It's a new thing we're doing, but this one was really funny. It's the sequel to One Deck Dungeon. So One Deck Dungeon is a cooperative or solo game, and my wife and I we pulled that out to play, and we said, okay, let's do this. And it's a dice-driven game where you take a character, they have a certain number of dice, you use those dice in challenges, and you roll your dice and you allocate them into different boxes. So it's a dice placement game, and you can combine numbers in order to make wilds, and that way you can cover numbers that you wouldn't normally be able to fill. But the original game, One Deck Dungeon, is the most random game I've played in a long time. It is, and we went back to it. And we're like, we haven't played this in a while. And as soon as we set it up, we lost in like 10 minutes. And this game's supposed to be like an hour, so we lost in like the first dungeon. We're like, what the heck? And we're like, oh, this is why we have not played this. It was so defeating because there was nothing we could do just because we rolled poorly. It was so frustrating. I was so upset because I was like, I remember liking a lot of mechanics in this game, and I do. I love the way the upgrade system works. Every time you defeat a card, you can slide it under your character as extra dice, extra health, or you can get it underneath for an ability, or you can use it for XP. And I love that system. I love that leveling up. I love the choice there, and I love how you're going to change your abilities each time. However, it just doesn't happen because of just the randomness of the dice plus the randomness of the luck of the draw. Sometimes you get stuck and it just sucks, and there's like nothing you can do about it. And then you're like 20 minutes into a game or 10 minutes into a game, and you already know you're going to lose the whole thing because you just haven't been gaining enough tempo or speed to even stand a chance against the boss. And the same thing can happen with the boss. Like one bad roll and that entire game can just hose you for the whole thing, and it's so frustrating. But enough about One Deck Dungeon. One Deck Galaxy here solves the issue because it comes with this space command board. And the way it works is now in the game, if you roll poorly, there's a separate board where the poor rolls can actually be used for something. You're doing like the set collection thing where you get passive bonuses, upgrades, things like that, that all rely on low numbers. And so now there's an additional output for negative stuff. So they took the too many bones route. They said, yes, we know it sucks, you're missing. Now your misses become something that's actually very positive. And that is perfect. That's a way that you're still able to build your character, still able to upgrade yourself, but you're not going to be punished too hard or rewarded too hard for getting low numbers. And I think that's huge. I think that needed to be added because otherwise, man, this one is just, it's such a good idea, such a good system. The upgrade is so good. The gameplay makes so much sense. It's fun. It's a good solo. It's a good two-player game. I love the way you're building things out. But the progression here of fixing those mechanics, streamlining some things, and making the game playable, super excited. I'm so ready for this one. And okay, rant over. Go ahead. What do you think, Dan?
No, I absolutely love that concept of whenever there's a dice-driven game to completely mitigate the the horrible moments when you just roll and you've got nothing you can do about it, just to contribute towards something else, to get something else building in the background, which you can eventually unleash in another way. I think that's such an easy fix. I'm surprised that this isn't just the go-to system on any game like this, because as soon as you add just something as simple as that, it will get players like me, who normally doesn't like roll-to-resolve games, interested. And it's so easy. There's no negatives at all. And I suppose some people could maybe argue that, I don't know, they like that, the tension of the one all or nothing roll. But I think more often than not, it's just anticlimactic. But yeah, for me, that sounds like a tremendous fix, and it sounds like it's designed to do what people were complaining about in the first place. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
I'm so pumped. I hope it's good, and the deluxe edition is like crazy overproduced. It's got like the metal cards and things like that. Oh man, I don't even know what this thing is gonna be. It's gonna be crazy. I'm excited. It's like those the old Burger King toys where you had like the golden Pokemon cards. You know what I'm talking about? So no idea.
So, I think so.
Oh man, they sold like golden Pokemon cards, like these tablets, and it was insane. So something like that, maybe. We'll see.
Okay, cool. So One Deck Galaxy. So yeah, the game I want to talk about is, it's not an episode of Corporate Cardboard without me talking about a Stefan Feld game. So if you are not aware, so Queen Games are currently having an ongoing project, kind of collaborating with Stefan Feld, who is one of my favorite designers. And this is kind of the second installment of the city collection, the first of which being Hamburg and Amsterdam, which were re-implementations of, I believe it was Bruges and Macau. So they're two reworkings. This second installment of two games has a re-implementation of Rialto, which is a game I was so on. Called New York City, but the one I'm most excited about is a brand new game called Marrakesh. So Marrakesh is a game that actually reintroduces the Dice Tower into a Stefan Feld game. So not Dice Tower, Cube Tower, sorry. And this one is a bigger game, taking 120 minutes to play. I've watched a little kind of interview with Stefan Feld himself, saying that this has the potential to be his kind of magnus opus, his masterpiece. So I'm really excited to see if that is the case. So it looks like, just from a kind of initial look into this game, and I know there is a rulebook out there, but I don't tend to read rulebooks before. And this one has that almost idea of when you go to certain regions or at certain places on the board, the more you invest there, the more powerful you become by going there. So if you're familiar with a game like Notre Dame, this game did that. So the more you go somewhere, the more feedback and the more rewards you get from taking that specific pathway. And again, that mixed with the idea that you are kind of choosing, I think it's 3 kind of cubes or 3 colors, and then you're putting those into the cube tower, and whatever comes out is going to be kind of a drafting pool for the other players to take certain colors from, which is going to be put onto the main board. And then there's all the kind of normal things you'd expect from a Stefan Feld game, such as the ongoing tensions and things fighting against you when you have to fight them off or suffer negative points. So it's got that kind of thread as well, and it just looks like it's got potential to be one of the kind of new Stefan Feld games. It's going to be up there with the best of them. So I hope that's going to be the case. I loved Amerigo, which used the cube tower, one of my favorite games of all time. And this one hopefully is going to be as good as those. There was a little bit of controversy about this campaign, because when they released the new version, these two, they actually didn't give the option to do the classic version, which was the kind of the non-deluxe one. They only gave the option to do the deluxe version, which didn't really make sense because there was no non-deluxe version. So it was kind of just how is that deluxe? But yeah, now they've done that. You can get the classic version now because of the feedback, and I'm so excited for it, and I hope it's going to be as good as I think it's going to be. So if you're a Stefan Feld fan and you weren't familiar with this one coming out, then check it out. Not the cheapest, it's pretty pricey, but hopefully the gameplay is going to warrant that.
Wow, that's really cool. I didn't realize that this was like that high on anticipation just in general. I didn't really know what this was, Marrakesh. I'd heard it, obviously. I knew it was part of the City Collection, but I didn't realize it was going to be his magnum opus, as you said. So that's exciting. That's something that I definitely want to check out now. So exciting. Very, very cool.
Yeah. Hopefully that's going to be the case, and that's just not him trying to sell it. I'm sure it is, but I've never had a bad Stefan Feld game. I just like some more than others, but this one has all the ingredients to be one of the great ones, I think. So Marrakesh still on Kickstarter if you want to check it out, and be prepared to open your wallet for that one. Okay, Mackenzie, any news items this week?
So the only news item I really wanted to touch on was a simple email that we received as backers for Ascension Tactics. And this is more of just something that I really appreciate in our industry, and that's transparency from the corporations and the different publishers. Particularly, this is Stoneblade Entertainment. They sent out an email recently saying that just being very direct and saying, hey, this is how much we are paying for shipping, and this is how much we charge you for shipping. This is the difference. And they said, hey, we're not going to charge any additional. This is the loss we're taking. And I think that's really cool. I think it's a really cool approach. They did put a link if you do want to donate, essentially. I think they're going to put something, but there's no required or mandatory thing. We're still going to be getting our games. They just want to be very upfront about the cost and how this might affect the games in the future. And I do like this approach. I think that makes a lot of sense. And if people do have extra, they can pay. And I think that's cool that it is totally optional. So the price that they collected for shipping was like $123,000, but the thing that they already bought for shipping was $302,000. This is a $170,000 price increase, which is huge because I'll look at the Kickstarter really quick here to get the numbers, but that's significant. They pledged $478,000 for this project. So they're losing about more than a fourth in just that shipping bump. which is insane. This isn't counting any funds collected on the pledge manager, obviously, only what's being told on the Kickstarter side of things, and they're already losing a cut of that because of the Kickstarter fees. So this is significant. This is more than a third, it looks like, of the actual project's earnings based purely on shipping, which is huge. That's a huge cut, and I only see this affecting games more in the future, just rising the cost. As you said, Marrakesh is looking very expensive. I imagine that most games will just be that expensive or more. And I'm curious if the reverse will ever happen. Once the shipping crisis dies down, if we'll have prices decrease, or if this will just become the standard. They'll just stay at this rate, and that'll just become the norm. I'm curious. What do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, it's absolutely. Well, that's catastrophic in terms of their profit margins. That's got to be almost nullify the whole project, you'd think. Was it worth doing if they didn't have that extra money? That's a lot of work, probably for a lot of their profits just to be thrown down the drain. But yeah, it seems to be no end to this situation at the moment. Really putting companies in horrible positions, really. I mean, I'm sure they want to get all their games out. When do they release them? Is it going to get worse? Is it now the time to do it? Are they going to just bite the bullet and really ramp up the prices for their games? But at the same time, I really do feel like sometimes we kind of lose the perspective that we are just backing board games, and when these prices are getting to £100, £200 for a board game, it's I know we're way under the ocean in terms of being in the hobby, but that is such a huge burden. Are people going to be paying £200 for a board game? That's absolutely mad when you think about it, when you're not in the hobby, from an outsider's perspective. But it just seems like we're getting more and more that way. The cheaper board games are starting to wash away, and everything's going up and up and up. Bigger productions, everything's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the price tag comes with that. But who knows? Maybe in a year or two's time, it might start, as you said, going down again. But I suppose time is the only answer for that one, and we'll have to wait.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Unfortunately, that's the situation we're in. So, but I do appreciate the transparency through it all. And I think that's a big thing I wanted to highlight here. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Full props to them for saying that and being open and, as you said, transparent. Okay, so let's go on to something else a bit more positive. So we'll go on to some component appreciation. So this is a segment where we talk about a particular aspect or a prop or a piece or a card or anything in a board game that we appreciate and we like. So Mackenzie, what have we got this week?
So this week I got to play Root and introduce it to some new people. Just real quick, Root is great. I love how easy this system is. I was so surprised because this is it's a great asymmetric game that just has all these mechanics that just work. They make a lot of sense, the shared mechanics, and then the complexity comes from the interaction of the different asymmetric powers. But the coolest thing about this game, not the coolest, but one of the best things about this game is the fact that it comes with card holders. And that is so nice. That just really elevates a game experience when the producers of the game just care about you that much, where they provide a place for you to put your cards, and it really just becomes like this whole package deal. So all of a sudden, now you've got this cute little card row that you're going to be putting your stuff on, and it's just one more thing that really elevates this whole experience. It's adorable, it's cute, and it makes sense. The cards play a huge integral part in this game, as not only do you have ambush cards that you can use to stop some of your opponent's troops if they're attacking you, but each faction also uses them uniquely. You're able to discard cards for their suits. You're all able to craft cards for their special abilities and powers. So just always being able to see your options is really nice. And I think it's just a great presentation. Definitely not necessary, definitely not something needed, but something that is so appreciated because it's just that little bump up of quality that I think there's so many things that I like about Root, and I think that's just kind of the cherry on top of this whole package and process. So I love the little card holders in Root. They're very simple, straightforward, just a simple black wooden bar with a slit in it, but they work and they're excellent. So that's my component appreciation, the card holders from Root.
Yeah, very nice. I do like a card holder myself. I actually bought some that I use all the time because I think they're such an underrated board game accessory. I think they're fantastic, and I love the idea of having everything in front of me and being able to see things, and the fact that it comes for a specific game is quite cool. But yeah, if you haven't got any card holders, I'd really recommend getting some because they are great and a great accessory. I'm sorry I couldn't get a picture there. I couldn't find one, but I'm sure you can get the idea of what a card holder looks like. Okay, cool. Yeah, good choice, Mackenzie. I like a card holder. The prop I want to talk about, or the component I want to talk about, is from another older game called Mexica, or Mexica, I think it's just supposed to be pronounced. And the particular version I'm going to talk about is the most recent edition by, I believe it's Super Meeple who published it. And this is, considering this is a pretty affordable game, it's an area control game, a classic design by Kramer and Kiesling, I believe. I think it's both of them. I know it's at least Wolfgang Kramer. And the particular component I'm talking about is the actual temples themselves. So in this game, you are basically putting these temples on this map, carving them up into different regions, and basically trying to control those regions by having the most kind of influence in terms of your temples. So the weak temples are only kind of one bit high. The strongest temples are kind of 4 levels high, but the actual temples themselves in this game are so high quality, considering how cheap this game is. They've got this kind of like dry brushed effect. They're really like, I don't even know what the actual material is. Maybe some kind of resin, but they're weighty. They're really tactile. You can clearly see what all the different levels are. And honestly, when it's on the table, these things just look absolutely fantastic, as the board just really does come alive. And I love the way that on all these temples, from the kind of bird's eye view on them, the level 4 temple has like 4 dots on them, level 3 has 3 dots, and so on. And not only are they just a great physical, tactile component, but they actually serve a great purpose and make the game really have a great table presence once the game is over, as you can see here from the image. So yeah, I absolutely I think it's great, and every single time I get this one to the table, people always comment about how good the components are. So that is the temples from Mexica.
Wow, these look great. Awesome. I love that dry brushing technique. It reminds me of like a classic board game piece, or something you might find like, ancient people playing with and seeing them push around the board. That's really neat. I like that. It looks very rustic. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fits really well. Just got a couple of comments here from Tim, saying that he's back 2 Kickstarter games coming next year, and is anxious to see if these the shipping rates relax. Yeah, even if UPS has halted parcel service to Australia for the time. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, yeah, crazy. Oh, and Tim's saying about the BGG store card holder and bit trays look good. Thinking of getting a set of those. Yeah, if you can get a set of card holders, I think you'll be surprised about how much you use them, because I was on the fence of getting them, and I'm so glad I did, because I said I use them all the time. Okay, cool. Let's move on then. So let's move on to the next segment, which is this or that. So Mackenzie, what was the topic for last week's this or that?
So our this or that from last week was Maracaibo versus Great Western Trail. The whole idea was, which of these 2 amazing Alexander Pfister designs are you going to be playing? Which is the one that you pick? And have you seen the results yet? Did we cover our thoughts on this? What was your thought? If a little refresher this time. I know that you covered it intensely in your Coaling video recently.
Okay, so again, I'll make it very clear, I like both of them. I think they're both really good games. However, I think Maracaibo is a phenomenal game, and I think there's quite a bit of crossover between the 2 that I couldn't warrant keeping both of them. So I went for Maracaibo. I go for Maracaibo every single time. And the comment I made in that culling video was, if I had both of the games on my shelf, I'd go for Maracaibo. Again, 10 out of 10. So I did actually not only hypothetically choose between the 2, I literally chose between the 2 and picked Maracaibo. How about yourself?
I also have to agree with you. I think Maracaibo is just the superior game. The system is more refined. The gameplay coming from the cards is really good, really dynamic, and you're having more of this hand management style as opposed to this very simplified deck building. And I think that the dynamic choices and the way that you can build combos and chains and just this ever-evolving system from that card tableau creating is huge. I love how the board is constantly evolving, and it's one that I just get lost in. I could just play Maracaibo forever. Whereas in Great Western Trail, yes, it has some of the same things where you're moving that piece around, getting the upgrades and ticking along, but it just misses the huge amount of choice that exists in Maracaibo. I still really like the system. I love moving around. I love the Rails to the North expansion. I love racing to the different areas, but I feel like the experience is just so clean and so good in Maracaibo, and I just want to keep playing that. And as you said earlier, I could get rid of Great Western Trail and not feel bad about it, because I know that I can always play Maracaibo instead.
Okay, what were the results then, Mackenzie?
So the results here, we had 53 votes for this question with a 66% leaning towards Great Western Trail. So Great Western Trail won here. And my question to the audience was, I was like, all right, my follow-up question, how many of you have actually played Maracaibo and not played Great Western Trail? Because I think that is huge. If you've played both, you're going to notice the severe difference between the two, the evolution of the mechanics and the refinement of design. And we have a couple of comments here. One from Tim actually said that he hasn't played either, but more attracted to the Great Western Trail theme, which I totally understand. That's a really fun theme of the cattle ranching, and I can see that being a big draw. So I appreciate Tim's insight there, just from an outlooker kind of looking at the two games' ideas. And then we also have another person who's commented here that agrees that they love the theme of Maracaibo, but won't get the expansion. Didn't really go into too much detail there. So curious to hear as to what maybe more ideas on that. But overall, a leaning towards Great Western Trail, which is currently the higher rated one on BGG. But I think that's just because it's been out longer, and I think that once more people play Maracaibo, they'll know the truth.
Yeah, so I agree with you personally, Mackenzie. But I don't know if a big part of my thought between the two was because I did play Maracaibo before I played Great Western Trail, so I had kind of that more, I suppose, emotional connection to it than after. What order did you play them in? Did you play Great Western Trail first?
Great Western Trail was actually one of the first games we got in the hobby. This, like, when we started playing, Terraforming Mars had just come out, and Great Western Trail as well. And we got into Great Western Trail. We loved it. We played that game forever. But then I got Maracaibo on a whim. Actually, I bought it like in a just to with another game to try to get up to the shipping threshold, and because I was like, oh yeah, this is the same dude as Great Western Trail. Let's give it a try. And like, just I played it like 3 weeks. Just that was like the only game I was playing because it was just so good, and I couldn't believe how good it was. And I was just like, is this really it? Like, this, it was insane. It was amazing. We got this right before the quarantine, actually, so this was like one that we just consistently pulled out. Oh man. Yeah, this is. Oh man, the game's so good. Maracaibo was so good. If you haven't played, do yourself a favor, play it, enjoy it. It's amazing, and it's one that you'll always constantly just want to go back to because it's so dynamic. It changes drastically. The deck construction is different, and there's just more content on its way in about a month or two with the new expansion. Can't wait to dive in. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah, everything that Mackenzie said is true. Okay, so what we're going to talk about as next episode's question, and what we're going to put forward to to our viewers.
So next question here is a classic debate. It's cost or even just appearance analysis based on these two components, and this is going to be miniatures versus standees. Now we know that the Kickstarter scene is filled with these large miniature board games, and sometimes people will ask for a cheaper alternative in the form of standees. I know that Kingdom Death Monster gets this a lot. They're like, hey, I'd love to play your game, but I just can't afford the price tag because of the huge, highly detailed miniatures. But some people just love the idea of these large miniatures games. So, Dan, what do you think? Which one do you lean more towards? Do you like miniatures, or do you prefer something like standees?
Well, I think I definitely prefer miniatures. However, if I had the choice between the two, and the price point between the two is significant to the point where I would be happy to take standees, because it's not a make or break thing for me personally, as it is for a lot of other people. I think, again, another tangible version of this, which we can talk about, is Voidfall. So I think it's safe to say that we both backed Voidfall. Is that the case?
Yes.
And did you go for the miniatures version, or did you go for the not miniatures version? Because I think I know the answer.
Naturally, I tried to make sure everything is all deluxeified, so definitely went for the fancy miniatures version. I think that a game like that, this epic scope, sounds like a blast, and it's not necessarily, in my opinion, the miniatures versus non-miniatures. It's more of, I want the coolest looking version, and if that is, it comes in the form of painted ships, let's go for it. I mean, if they had this amazing, there was a Kickstarter recently, I forget what it's called, but it was like a story adventure game that had these standees that were made of like glass and fully painted, and I thought that was so neat. That was such a cool way to evolve this standee version of a deluxeified component. If that existed for Voidfall and it looked good, then I'd be all for it. But it's more of just like, I want it to pop the best as possible, and if that comes in the form of miniatures, I'm game.
Okay,
What
yeah,
do you
fair
think?
enough. And obviously, you're happy to pay that extra premium to do that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I actually did go for the non-miniature version because I'm again that I play well. I don't get to play the same game over and over and over again as much as I'd like to. So I think it would be kind of unwarranted for me to get all the miniatures because I'm happy with just the cardboard tokens, to be fair. And to be honest, if I had the choice between miniature standees, I would actually take the third party and go for meeples. So I'd much rather have wooden meeples or something like that. I love that kind of nostalgic, classic feeling, bright wood meeples. That's my cup of tea. That's what I love. But again, if everything was equal, so I'd go for miniatures because miniatures look fantastic. It draws people in. It makes the table presence so much more ramped up. But yeah, I said it does come with such a huge premium.
I do want to add one quick thing when it comes to this miniatures versus standees argument, and that is when the game has information on the standees and then they change it to miniatures and it loses that information. Now this is huge. I recently just did a review like last night. I was playing it and I was so frustrated with this thing. There is a Kickstarter that recently delivered. It's called Tsukiyumi Full Moon Down. Have you heard of this game? Very popular German design. It's set in this like comic universe, and it's this huge troops on a map game, and each of the units is like super different, and their stats are different, and they have on the standees all of the stats of all the characters. Now they created a miniatures version of this game through Gray Fox Games, and the miniatures do not have the stats on the miniatures anymore. Now you have this like reference card that you'll be looking at, and every time you do battle, you're holding up like your 4 reference cards for all the different factions that are in the battle. You're looking at each character and you're like, oh, is this? I can't really tell which miniature this is. And oh my gosh, that is the worst idea I've ever heard of. And oh man, I'm just so frustrated. It's so frustrating because they've made the game they've added this huge barrier that's totally unnecessary, and the artwork on the standees is so good. I don't know. There's no reason.
Right.
There's no reason. Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
if it's not warranted, if it doesn't help at all, if it's going to hinder your game, don't do it. Just stick with the thing that works. Or if you're going to do it, print it on the miniatures, right? Like have it somewhere, put it on the base. I don't know. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. So it's not always just the actual visuals. There's some actual functionality issues as well that come from this. Storage, storage is with miniatures is ramped up massively. A box that would take a third of the space is tripled by the time it's got miniatures in them, especially as they're getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, everything's got its pros and cons. So it'll be really interesting to get the answer to this one actually. So yeah, stay tuned and we'll put that question out in the upcoming days. So interesting discussion actually. I think it's a good topic. So miniatures, standees, or maybe we'll check in the wildcard with meeples as well. So that is this week's This or That. So let's move on to the next segment, which is mechanism appreciation. So other than the traditional component appreciation, which we talked about last time, where you're talking about physical things, this one we're talking about the intricacies, the decisions, the mechanisms of a game, which we really like and appreciate and just find interesting. So Mackenzie, what have we got as your choice on this episode?
So one game I've really been enjoying, it finally delivered for us. It was wrapped up in a pre-order. This is Ginkopolis. And so this has come out years ago. This is a 2012 design, but it still remains so interesting, so fun, so different, so unique. And I really enjoyed this one. Now, the mechanism that I want to talk about specifically is the way that the deck construction works. So this game has a ever-changing deck of cards. And the way it works is when you take a turn, you'll have a hand of 4 cards, you discard one, and it relates to something on the board. Whether it be a letter tile that allows you to place tiles out and kind of build the city outside, as you can see here with the HF and G, or it can be a card that's associated to one of the tiles that's in play. So as you can see, there's a 16, a 10, 15 of blue. You'll have a card in the deck that matches each of those cards. And I love this idea that every single card in your hand is live at any point in time, and there's only one of each of those cards. So as you play, you can kind of want and expect and wait for specific cards to appear. And I love this idea. It makes so much sense. And the coolest thing about this is the deck evolves, and that's my mechanism, is the changing deck of cards. Whenever you play a tile onto the board, you'll put one of these crane markers, this large gray token on it, and then once the deck runs out, you'll be taking all those gray tokens off and adding the cards that match the tile into the deck. And this is such a clever mechanism. It's such a cool idea, because essentially the more cards that are added, the more the deck changes. And it has to, right? Because now all these cards exist. But it also adds this really cool mechanism of delayed addition of cards. So once you build a card, you know that it will kind of be safe for a while and no one will be able to touch it until the deck runs out. So I like this idea of this timing aspect. And I love the way that the deck changes, because in addition to the cards being added to the deck, when you play cards and you build on top of them, the tiles that you cover are removed from the deck and they go in front of you, as you can see here, and become part of your engine building. And this is so cool. The original cards will give you extra abilities whenever you take actions. And then later in the game, those larger numbers, because they're harder to cover, are going to give you end game scoring potentials. And this is such a clever mechanism. I love this idea. I love the way it works, and it still remains fresh and fun to this day. So I love this classic mechanic and this fantastic area control game. You played this one. I saw that you had it rated. Is this one you've dived into recently?
Yeah, I have played this one. I think it's a lovely game, really good. As I said, I completely agree with you with that way that the board is constantly not going up, not really spreading, but going upwards as well. I said retiring cards under it and building a very simple but satisfying little engine. And I think one of the things I love about Ginkgopolis is its kind of hybrid nature. So ultimately it's an area majority style game, but the way that that's synergized with the pass and draft system works really well, seamlessly. Probably one of the most involved game that has a pass and draft system where that isn't the main part of it. I really like that. It's just a very well-rounded game. It feels almost timeless in the way it works. Very simple, no convolution in this game. I think it's a lovely game. I'm really happy with that one. Yeah, good game and a good choice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okie dokie. So my choice is something not quite to the scope of Ginkgopolis, but a game that I like nonetheless. This is a relatively unknown filler game, a very pretty one that is, again, maybe if you watch some of my content, you might be more familiar with it, because I seem to be one of the only people who do talk about this game. This is a game called Parade. And Parade is, again, a nice 30-minute filler game, one of those golf-style games where you're trying to score as few points as you can by the end of the game, based on this Alice in Wonderland theme. So you can see here it's got this real vibrant artwork with a Cheshire Cat on the cover. Dates all the way back to 2007, actually, so quite old. But the mechanism I love about this game is this queue system in this game. So as you'd expect with a lot of these card games, this one has different suits of cards represented by these different characters. And each of those suits consists of characters numbered from, I think it's 0 to 10. If I can get an example here. Here we go. And all you do on this game is you take a card from your hand and you play it to one side of the row of cards that have been played previously. And when you play it on the end of that row, you're going to skip over a number of cards equal to the number on it. So if you played a 5 card, the first 5 cards are completely safe and you do not have to take them, bearing in mind that the objective is to score as few points as possible. Then anything after that 5 cards, if you played the 5 that is, then any card with a lower number on it or the same character type, then you have to take a scoring in front of you. So it really is a game where, again, you don't really want to do anything because you don't want to acquire any cards. But when you play these cards, you want to be careful to, now's not really the best time to play a 10 because there's only 4 cards in the middle and I'm going to skip over, I'm only going to skip over 4 when potentially I could have skipped over 9 cards in the future if I don't use it now. But at the same time, if you end up collecting more characters of a certain type than the other players at the end of the game, then rather than those points being worth the points value on those cards, they actually flipped over and are only worth 1 point each. So it really is quite interesting where, if you do unfortunately have to take more cards than you'd like to, then you want to make sure that you have the most cards of that type so that they're only worth 1 point each and not their full value. A really cool system Again, I've never seen this used in any other game. Again, when you play a card, you jump over that amount of cards. And I think it just works really well. It makes this game feel unique. A really good filler game, and I'd highly recommend it. That is the queue jumping system from Parade. I don't think I've heard you talk about this, Mackenzie. Have you played this one, or does it strike any interest to you?
I have not played this one, but I hear you talk very highly of it. I know this is a filler game that you recommend quite a bit. So this is one that I do want to check out. So I hope it holds up. I think that this is a very unique way of scoring. And I like the idea of kind of like pushing the envelope on taking too much of something, or wanting to be the person who takes too much of something. So I like this idea, and I like the style. It's cool. I'll give it a try. I love the artwork. It's very nice.
Yeah, very, very attractive game as well. Okay, cool. That is our mechanism appreciation there. So 2 very different games. So let's talk about everyone's favorite segment with the random game generator. So this is where we take a look at the random function on BGG, and we talk about whatever comes up. So any inkling today, Mackenzie? What we going to get?
A hot new Essen release.
Oh,
yeah, like buddy, let's go.
I like it. I'm going to go with a game in the top 2,000. Let's go for it.
Come on, give me the good one.
Let's see what we get. Yeah, sorry for the slow Wi-Fi, but hey, we have to work with what we've got. That just adds to the tension that we need some kind of drum roll.
Do you have any sound effects or anything on deck?
Oh, okay. Here we go. We have Craft Your Brew, the brewing game. Wow. Okay. No ratings, no comments. Wow, this is the obscure of the obscure. So we've got a game for 4 to 16 players.
Oh,
that's
my gosh.
very crazy. Very specific. Oh, we go. Auction dexterity game. How strange. Right, let's read the little synopsis here. So it says the stealthy and cunning beer crafting card game. So work in teams and keep your wits about you in this fast-paced card game based on all things beer. Outwit, deceive, and fool your opponents using stealth and guile to signal your teammate when you have 4 of a kind, or hone your senses to block your opponents from doing the same and clinching a point. Okay, so there's no images, there's no discussion, there's nothing else to go on other than
there's a video.
That. Oh, is there a video?
There's one video. No? Oh,
no.
Wait, maybe not.
No, I haven't got one here. Okay, let's see if there's any comments. No comments. Okay, so it's purely based on that synopsis. So are we interested, Mackenzie? Is this something you want to get to your table immediately?
It looks great. The art's really pulling me in. The mechanics seem sound. I like winking at my fellow players. Let me see if I can find this. What's it called? Craft Your Brew.
Craft Your Brew, the brewing game.
Brewing game. Is this real? Does this exist? Is this actually just a drinking game? Is this a form of spoons? Is that what this is?
Oh, it could be actually. Yeah, that's not a bad shout.
What it looks like. It looks more like something like spoons. It's okay. Is it called Craft Your Brew, or is it called Brewmaster?
It's called Craft Your Brew, then : the brewing game. Published by Professor Puzzle Limited.
It's on eBay.
Okay.
So I think they actually changed the name. It's called Craft Your Brew. It's Craft Your Brew, the brewing game?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a card game, and it's available on eBay for $10 with $9 shipping. So I'll put the link here for you. Oh, man, okay. You're going to have to jump off of BGG if you do, though, because it is on eBay. But you can actually see it on here. It's work in teams, keep your wits about you. It's got 52 cards. It looks like it just has a bunch of different beers that are all just forms of suits. So I think it does look kind of like a spoon style game as you're trying to collect cards for your opponents. I don't see anything else really aside from it. It looks very small. It's a team style game, 4+ players in teams of 2. So that makes sense why it can go up to the highest as possible. But I think that spoons is probably the more apt comparison here to any other game. But it looks like Professor Puzzle has a lot of these, as you can also buy 2 for $5 in this brand new. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like many people have been picking this up. No ratings, no comments, no nothing on this. The seller has positive feedback though, so you'll get a copy of this game if you do go for it.
Oh well, there we go. It's sometimes it's hit. More than often, it's a miss on this one, but that's part of the fun. So I'll just stay on the BGG page rather than my internet going all crazy and not being able to get back. So there we go. Random game of the month. Craft your brew. Check it out. Flying off the shelves. I'm sure you'll get a copy if you want it. 4 to 16 players. If you got 16 people over for Christmas, there you go. That's your go-to game. All right. So moving on from random game, let's go on to why is this in your collection? So this is a segment where we talk about a game in each other's collection and just question why we've wanted to keep those games. Sometimes it's because we don't like them. Sometimes we just want to know a bit more about them. So any of those reasons, it could be the way to go. So let's what game have you got for me, Mackenzie? Should we start with you?
Sure. So my game that I want to know about is one that you have played quite a bit and you have it rated pretty low, and I'm curious as to why you still have it. This is called Not Alone. So 2016 game. I've never seen this one actually. It's the first time I've seen it, but I've heard it suggested a couple times for play, and I know nothing about it. So why do you rate it so lowly, and why do you still have it? What makes it one that you're willing to keep it in your collection? Is this one that your brother has that he doesn't get rid of, or I'm curious to see what the case is here. So tell me about Not Alone.
Yeah, this is a game that doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my brother, which is we share a collection. This is actually I don't dislike this game. I think it's okay. I'm not sure what I've rated that. I'll just have a look what I've rated it.
A 5.5.
Okay. So I think technically this game isn't that good objectively, but I think maybe the fun factor from the game is better than the weight or the rating would suggest. So again, not very clever in terms of how it plays, but the fun outweighs that. So this is a kind of a hide and seek style game. I think it's often described as, where it's a one versus all style game. So one person is supposed to be this kind of alien style figure, like this extraterrestrial predator, and the other bunch of people are a kind of bunch of marine kind of people. Think of the film Alien. And the idea of this game is that you have a bunch of locations depicted by cards, and the idea is that each of the player is trying to choose one of these locations, which all have a certain benefit on them, with the objective of trying to get there, trying to escape the island, and at the same time the alien is trying to guess the locations in which the players are going to go to, and then if they go to that location and there's a simultaneous reveal, then the alien is going to capture them, and therefore the alien is going to move closer towards the objective and potentially win the game. I think I like the idea of it quite a lot. I think some of the things that I didn't like about the game were that there's some kind of got you moments in terms of these action cards you could play on each other, which you just can't see coming, which I think is kind of necessary because it can feel at times a bit unfair. And I think this game actually does quite significantly depend on the player count. So I think the actual optimal way to play this game is 1 versus 1. It's quite good fun with one person being the alien, one person being the Marines. Whereas if and I think it does scale quite highly. So if there's a bunch of players as the Marines and one person's the alien, there's kind of a bigger chance of you getting caught, but at the same time more people getting away as well. So it kind of has a bit more of a chaotic feel to it, and you can kind of just throw the dart at the dartboard and hopefully it will hit somewhere where someone else is going. But I think it's a good example of its genre. Not normally not normally the kind of thing I'd go for or buy for myself, but in relation to how quick this one is, has some pretty tense moments, and you just need to escape one more time before the alien catches you, and you can have those kind of stand up and cheer moments. But it's fine. Not my standard Euros kind of thing I play, but good at what it does, I would say.
This looks fun. Okay, so I had no idea what this was going into it. All I saw were the big eyes on the box, and I had no idea that this was this style of game. This is interesting. I like it.
Yeah, I think you might like it. And yeah, Tim, yeah,
that's a comment there.
That's a fair comment. How long can you blame your game choices on your brother? Yeah.
Do you even have a brother?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but yeah, that's fair. I mean, we generally have the same tastes, but sometimes there's a slight offset in that. And again, I don't want this to sound like it's a bad game, because it's not. It's just not quite to my taste. That's all. Okay, Mackenzie, what for you? Sorry, it's my choice on you.
Your choice. Bring it on.
The game I wanted to talk to you about is one that I just don't know what to make of. So I've heard pretty good things about this. So almost everybody I've heard say it's good, but when I've heard it described and when I've heard the concept of it, I always think, where's the fun in that? Am I missing something? And this is a game called Skull. So how does Skull play? Are there meaningful choices there? And is it a good game?
So Skull it's great, actually. I think it's a really good game. It's an evolution of the game Liar's Dice, if you've ever played that. So it's a very simple game of bidding and betting and predicting what other people have. There are many games in this genre now of you have some form of resource or some form of point evaluation, and it's your job to do your best to kind of predict what the whole group has face down. So it's a very simple system. Everybody will have these coasters in front of them, and then on your turn, you either will add another coaster or you'll make a challenge. And the challenge is how many of those coasters you can flip on all players' boards and hit of flowers. And so every player has 3 of these roses, these flowers, and then 1 skull. And so when you're playing, you have the choice of either putting flowers that you can have a better time with the auctioning portion, or you can put a skull down and try to prevent people from flipping. So it's a very interesting game. And the big twist here is whenever you flip your tiles, you always have to start with your own. So if you're putting the skull out, you're kind of making it risky for yourself to actually be pushing the bid up, because you want it to be challenging for people. But if you ever put the skull down and you actually win the auction, you're going to end up getting yourself out. So it's a cool push and tension of how strong can I bluff, and that's exactly what this game is. It's a pure bluffing game that's all based on the positioning of these tiles and what you think other people are going to have. So I think this is very solid. It can be played pretty much anywhere. It has a very low learning curve, and I think it's really cool that it's very easy to jump in and get this one played. This is one that I play with young kids and adults alike. It's a great game that you can just simply put in your backpack or whatever. So it's a great size. This is a very solid bluffing game. I think it's great. It's in that vein of great bluffing games like Cockroach Poker, where it's very light, but it is fun and it's going to get played and cause a lot of laughs and great stand-up moments. So I really like this one. So it's very different style game, but the art is fantastic. I think you would like this one if you enjoy this style of game.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we mentioned on the last episode that I'm kind of looking for a good bluffing game. I always find like there needs to be at least something there to hook me rather than just the bluffing itself. Because you mentioned Cockroach Poker there. I really did struggle with Cockroach Poker. I didn't quite know what I was playing other than saying one thing or another, and I didn't really understand the game behind it. Maybe it's just the way my mind works. But I'll give it a go. I think it's affordable, and because so many people like this one, and maybe I'm missing something and I need to play it myself. But yeah, thanks for the description there, and I might check it out.
I think that if you have that criticism about Cockroach Poker with it kind of being too open and just kind of doing whatever, I think that Skull will give you a bit more of what you're looking for. Because in Skull, the whole point is to win 2 challenges. So there's an objective that you're going for, and that's where the tension and the bluffing comes in. Because do you go for the victory? And that's really cool. That's where the tension comes in. And I think that's a big difference, where in Cockroach Poker, you're kind of just playing until someone loses and you're just throwing stuff out. In Skull, you have a purpose, you have an objective, and you can do clever things to push yourself towards that objective. So I think this will be a bluffing game that's right up your alley.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll take a look. Okay, let's move swiftly on to the A to Z. So this is where we talk about a couple of games from a certain letter category. I believe we're on K this episode, and we usually talk about a lighter game and a more involved game, and discuss why those games are interesting to us. So Mackenzie, what have we got as your first game?
All right, so the first game that we're going to be talking about in mine is a very small game, but it's a Spiel des Jahres winner. It's from Dan's favorite designer here, Bruno Cathala, and it is King Dominoes. This is a very small tile drafting game where you're going to be drafting these domino pieces, and you're doing this by picking them based on their value. And they're organized from top to bottom, with the top being the worst tile, just objectively. It has the least amount of scoring, and to the best tile on the bottom. And I think this is a great system right off the bat, because where you place your character to take the tile, that's your turn order for the next turn. So do you take a weak tile to get a better turn order, or do you just go for those strong points in order to get what you need for scoring? And I think that's a great decision, great choice. I think it won the Spiel des Jahres for a reason. It's easy to play, very fun, very calculating. The biggest probably detriment to it is just how long the scoring takes. It can be a little convoluted with multiplying your things, but it really is a very simple game, and the scoring is pretty simple once you play it maybe once or twice. And I think it's a very fun one to wrap your head around. There's actually a sequel for this, King Domino Origins, that just got announced for Gen Con Eschen Spiel time. So it's available now. You can purchase it now. And this is just super, super fun. I love this one. It's very small, very short. And I love the different ways you can play this, with either the jumbo 2-player mode, or if you want something a bit more complex, you can jump into something like Queen Domino. So that's King Domino, my pick for my light game for K.
Okay, I actually have a feeling that I might like this one. I've not played it,
Oh
but
no! Why
is this
not?
I don't know. Is this something you'd play with other games as well, or purely as a
Yes,
gateway tool?
actually.
Yeah.
I think it's
Okay.
actually it's fun. It's good. It's short, and it's a good time. Like, the decisions actually matter, and I like it. I think that it's really interesting. I prefer playing it with 3 or 4 players, because you're only drafting one tile at a time. But the 2-player is also interesting because you have 2 meeples and you'll be drafting twice at a time. That's pretty cool too. So I like that the game changes based on the player count, and the size of your the kingdom you're making in front of you also will change based on the mode you're playing. So I like it. It's very neat, and I love creating this big kingdom. And you've got the domino placement, right, where you're trying to match the ends, and you're creating areas with the dominoes this time, as opposed to kind of just matching a single symbol. You're matching these huge areas. So it's a great one. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think you should give it a try. You should try
Yeah,
King Domino Origins and let me know how it is, so that I know if I need to go get it or not.
no, definitely keen to try this one. Tim, thanks for joining us. I know Tim's from Australia. I'm sure it's very late for him. So yeah, we'll see you soon, Tim. Thanks for joining us. And let's talk about my lighter game. So my lighter game is another game from Reiner Knizia. So already talked about Knizia game this episode, but this is the second one, completely opposite to Tigress and Euclides. This is a game called Kariba. So Kariba, a tiny box game, most recently printed by Helvetique, who make almost Oink style games in terms of the boxes. And this one is a very simple hand management and set collection style game. Well, I suppose a card collecting style game, because your purely points are based on how many cards you get. So this one, you are playing cards on this this wheel here, which is supposed to represent a kind of a watering hole. Each spot with a different number on them. You're playing as many cards as you want of a certain type of animal on these spots. And as soon as you play the third one of a certain type, it's going to consume the animal on the next lowest spot. So again, if you play the elephant on the 8th spot here, you played the third elephant. Therefore, there's nothing in the 7. There's nothing in the 6. So therefore, it would eat the 5 ostrich, and then you put that ostrich on your scoring pile, which is going to mean a point at the end of the game. So it's as simple as that. You're just smashing cards down, constantly getting points. And to be honest, as a 3 or 4 player game, this game's completely chaotic. As a 2-player game, it's actually pretty interesting and quite fascinating how it works. Has some good kind of bluffing, some kind of luring people into traps. And when you might put an animal down, they'll put another animal down to eat yours, and then you smash some more down to eat theirs. So it has this kind of cool chain reaction mechanism to it, and it actually flows really well for a 15-minute game that pretty much anybody can play. So that is Kariba.
This is cute. I like the style. I like the art. I think that makes a lot of sense. This is cool. When did you get introduced to this company? How did you find out about this game?
I think I watched a review of the older version of this game many years ago. I think it was from a Z Garcia Z Garcia review, and I think I just many years later, I saw that Helvetique reprinted it, and one of the only local game shops to me had it on a kind of like a little grab stand, where you kind of an impulse purchase stand. Yeah. It only took us about £10, and I picked it up and I liked it. It was a pretty big hit actually, and I haven't played it in a while, but I do still have it in my collection, and it's always managed to evade a cull because I think it's so small, compact. Again, you can teach it to anybody, and it's fast. So really nice little game. That is Kariba.
Excellent. All right, so my big game here is one that Dan and I both really like, and I had to mention it just because it's the season. This is a fantastic game about worker placement and worker auctioning. Oh, amazing game. This is Keyflower. So Keyflower is Richard Brees' design. absolutely wonderful tile placement game where you're going to be building this village in front of you, and you do so using workers. So your workers are your currency for the game. They're different colored, and the color locks specific actions and auctions. So if you want a tile from the center, you put one of your meeples around it, and once that color is set, everybody has to follow suit in that color to outbid you. And then you can also use them to actually activate the tiles and by placing them onto the pieces on the board. Now, the cool thing about this is every single tile is available to you. I can even use ones that Dan may own. But if I do, he will be getting those workers at the end of the round that he gets to use next round. And I love this system. I love the engine building. I love how straightforward and simple the turns are. And I love how just dang tense the choices are, because you want to do literally everything on your turn, but you get to do one thing. And it hurts so bad when there's so much you need to do and you decide to use one tile and somebody uses the other one. And now you're locked into a color, and you can kind of understand and see how the game evolves based on the colors that people are using and getting. Oh yeah, he's got a million blue pieces. Doesn't matter. I'm going to put a red here. And all of a sudden you're locked out of a specific color. This game is so good. I love this style. And I just think it's so wonderful. I play this every day. I love this game so much.
Yeah, absolutely amazing game. Love this one. So, I think you actually kind of maybe pull the trigger on this one, and I'm so glad you did. Scales so well, has so much hidden depth here in relation to the flow and the economy of the game. You know, is it worth me getting this tile because you've already invested on it? Am I going to bid to get the meeples on it? Am I going to use your tiles by using the ones you've bid before? I love that just the smoothness and the flow, as I said, the flow of the meeples around the game. Yeah, absolutely amazing. You can't even talk about this game. You could spend an hour talking about it comfortably because it's that clever, that intricate, and amazing timeless design. That is, yeah, fantastic. Great choice.
I got to touch really quick on the scoring. I love the scoring tiles as well. I love that you get them right at the beginning, and those tiles will be the tiles that get put out in the last round. So you have all this secret scoring that people can kind of infer based on what you're doing. Love this. It's so good. All right. What you got? What's your big game?
Yeah. The bigger game I'm going to talk about is a bit like Parade, one of the games that only I seem to talk about. So this is a game called Kanagawa, Merchants of the Silk Road. This one is an engine building game that uses cards, and you're basically acquiring cards and putting them in 3 different columns, at least 3 to start with, and with the idea of trying to build an engine of these different abilities to try acquire resources and then to fulfill contracts. So it has an almost splendor feel to it, where you're trying to work towards a certain amount of points, race aspect to it. But I love the engines you can build here. As again, you can build really long churning engines, and all these different things get you different resources, etc. Or you could do really tight, intricate engines, which are specifically designed for a very particular purpose, such as being the cards that actually let you fulfill contracts in the first place. So you're always subject to the cards in front of your columns, and I love that system. And as soon as you use them, they go to the back of the column. And another mechanism that I'm surprised no one else has ever used. I could be wrong on that, but I've never seen it before. This caravan system, so clever. So much scope to be explored with this mechanism. I'm surprised there's not been a more involved and a heavier version of this game that's come out since, because it is such a cool game. Maybe a bit generic in the way it looks. Maybe that's something that puts people off. But the gameplay itself is fascinating and really good fun. Have you played Kanagawa, Mackenzie?
I have not, but if there's ever someone to evangelize this game, it's you. So we'll see if I do end up getting this one to the table. Once again, like you said, it's got that classic angry man on the front Euro box. So it's not one that's going to definitely jump off the shelf. But if it's good, it'll get played. So I'm excited to give it a try.
Yeah, it is good, and I think it's even got potential to be better by making almost the same game, but just adding maybe a layer more complexity. Because a lot of these cards do similar things, just with different resources. But again, that core system is great, and when you line things up in a very designed way, it's really satisfying when it works out. So yeah, that is Kanagawa, Merchants of the Silk Road. Okay, so just about getting there with this episode. So. The final segment is where we introduced a question from last week. I believe the last question was, how many conventions do you generally go to each year? Mackenzie, what was your answer for this one?
So my answer for this one was I'd probably go to 2 or 3 conventions normally. Most of them are local conventions here in Colorado Springs. I really like going to conventions and actually working them. I think that's my preferred way to attend them. And so I really enjoy going to these local ones, bringing a collection of games and just kind of sharing the love of games and watching people come in and jump in on games. It's fun. I really like being able to give people an experience that they can leave with and be like, oh, wow, I really liked playing games with Mackenzie from Side Game. It was awesome. So I really like that. So that's my thing.
Yeah, cool. So we only really have one big one here in the UK, the UK Games Expo, which I try to go to every single year. I went this year, even though it was a smaller, kind of dumbed down version of it. I think I would like to start going to more kind of gaming orientated ones, because when I go to the UK Games Expo, I purely go there as a shopping trip, really. I don't really stay and play any games or demo anything. And it'd be nice to kind of dive into the whole convention thing and maybe go to a more gaming orientated convention. So open to try that. And I'd like to go to more each year. But what were the results to the poll, Mackenzie?
So we had about 59 votes this time, and 78% of voters, so way more than half, don't go to conventions. They just don't. And I totally understand. As you said just now, it's more of a shopping trip, most conventions. If you're actually going as an attendee, as opposed to someone who's working, it's hard to play games because you're just getting them right. So it kind of sucks having to learn it on the spot than playing it. And so 78% of people would rather stay home and hang out with the people that they know and play their games there. 17% say about once a year, with 3% saying twice a year. And then we have that rare 2% going 4 times or more a year. Tim, that was here on the stream earlier, he said that just like you, there's only one really big convention that actually happens in Australia, and it's around Essen time. And so it's very hard for these large conventions to occur in places where I guess the population's not as crazy as something like the Americas. So I'm not sure. Why do you think there's only one big convention in the UK?
I don't know. I really don't know. I suppose maybe I'm underestimating the size of some of the other ones, because there are some at least medium-sized ones in the UK, but certainly not even near the scope of the UK Games Expo. I know none of the other conventions get kind of international coverage as they do as the UK Games Expo. Even like the Dice Tower, etc., talk about the UK Games Expo, where they wouldn't talk about Aircon or anything like that happens in the UK. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just that it's got the niche. It's kind of got the monopoly on the thing here. I don't know. It's maybe there's scope for another convention to break through. But I think maybe more localized, smaller ones would be kind of the next thing I'll be looking for, really. But there is one actually about half an hour away that usually used to happen one time a year, which is pretty much just a weekend of gaming at a hotel. That kind of thing I'd like to see more of, and more local as well, because most of it happens up country, where it's going to take me 4 or 5 hours to get to, when it would be nice to just drive down the road and spend half an hour to get to a convention.
I think we're pretty lucky here in the Springs. We have a lot of small conventions like that. There's even this really cool one. It's called I forget what it's called. GameCon. It's ran by the local high schools here, and I think that's really neat, where they're bringing in all these kids to gaming, and they just get volunteers to show and play games and run tournaments and stuff. And I think that's a really cool approach to this, getting people of all different facets to join. So I really like that style here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sounds it just sounds really fun. It'd be nice just to go for a whole weekend, no worries about anything else, just gaming, eating, drinking, that kind of thing. It sounds wonderful. It sounds like my kind of weekend. But okay, yeah, we'll put that. Introduce the new question for next episode, which is we're going to be talking about. I suppose this is more of a kind of this or that kind of question, but I think it's an interesting one, where we're going to talk about if you had the choice between either playing new hot games or games that are going to come out from this point going forward, or only play games that you've already been released. So talk about any game that's been released up to this point, or any game released from this point. So I think that's quite an interesting conundrum. I suppose a lot of games going forward are going to be re-implementations of games out now anyway. So I really don't know where I'd fall with this one. I think if I had the choice, I probably would say games going forward, because I like constantly playing new things, seeing what's coming out, and that's part of the fun of the hobby for me. What about you?
I'd have to agree with you because the hobby itself is just constantly evolving, always improving on itself. I may not be able to play Blood Rage again, but I can play the new Blood Rage 2 that's coming out, and that's all good. So
Yeah.
I will constantly be able to try new things, and I think just with the amount of games coming out, I'll never have an issue of playing something that I know that I'll like, because there's always going to be something in the genres that I enjoy, and I don't think it would be really a big issue. Obviously, I'd be very sad to not be able to revisit and return to some things, but I think that there's just so many more years ahead of me than there are when it comes to gaming behind me. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great summary of it, actually. And I'm quite interested to see what the audience's feedback will be on this one, because I actually think this will be quite a close call. I think a lot of people have, I think in general, a lot of people have a lot more nostalgia and a lot more that emotional connection with the games they've already had and play the same games over and over again, more than maybe more than is known really, because obviously there's constantly new games coming out, constantly material coming out to consume, but we don't really talk about games that have been out and people are playing and actually hitting the tables as or as much as probably the reality is. So it'll be interesting to see what the results of that one are. So again, much like the this or that question, we'll put that poll up in the next week or so. Okay, so Mackenzie, before we wrap up the episode, any particular games you're looking forward to playing before the next time we have a meetup?
Let's see. So we have a couple of games coming in. So Cascadia is exciting. I want to give that one a try. It looks great. It looks like a good reiteration of Calico's design. So I like this. I like this. It sounds cool. The theme is wonderful. The art's gorgeous. And then I think other than that, I just want to play more Hadrian's Wall, if we're being honest. That game is my jam recently. I'm having so much fun with it. It's a big boy rolling right, and it's just a lot of fun. I've played it 4 times already, and I still haven't done everything, which is crazy with doing these rolling rights, because usually you want to go with it. It's got this great system where you're going to be picking your scoring objectives every round, and that's going to kind of dictate which paths you go, but you have so much choice in those paths, which is really neat. So I'm excited. I just want to play more of that, for being honest.
Yeah. I am really dying to play Hadrian's Wall, but it's out of print in Europe again, so I'm waiting for a new copy or a new printing to come out, because that looks so interesting, and I really can't wait to play that one.
Out of print in the US as well. Was really hard to find. I found it at like a random candy store, so I'll take it. Sure.
Okay, cool. Myself, I've still got quite a few things to play. I was hoping to play Gloomhaven before we met up again, but that didn't happen. But no, I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to try and get Crystal Palace played for the first time, and maybe even start looking at the rules for A Feast for Odin. So finally managed to get a copy of A Feast for Odin after being out of print for such a long time. But hopefully we'll get those achieved, and we can reconvene next time and talk about our experiences with those games. Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps up the episode. Thanks for everybody who's joined us live, and of course everybody who's going to watch as it's or in slow time, basically. So again, we really enjoyed this doing this, and it's a great fun experience, and good to meet up every now and then and talk about what we've been playing. So hopefully you enjoy it too. Always appreciate feedback, and we always just strive to make the show better and better. So hopefully I've not been too bad as the host at this episode, and it's gone relatively smoothly. So until next time, we shall see you next time on Corporate Cardboard. Bye now.